I still remember the exact moment when my life of 22 years shattered into pieces. It wasn't when I found lipstick on his collar, or suspicious text messages, or even unexplained late nights at the office. No, it was when she showed up at our front door, her hand confidently stroking her swollen belly, asking for Arnold's bags. "I'm Melissa," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Arnold sent me to pick up his things." I stood frozen in the doorway of the home we had built together, my mind struggling to process the woman standing before me. She couldn't have been more than 30, with glossy chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders and an expensive-looking maternity dress hugging her very pregnant form. "You know how he is," she continued, her voice dripping with familiarity. "A businessman. Always busy. He thought it would save time if I just stopped by." I just nodded, unable to form words as the blood rushed to my ears. 7 months pregnant, which meant this had been going on for at least that long. While I had been planning our anniversary trip, while I had been supporting his career, while I had been loving him faithfully for over 2 decades. "May I come in?" she asked, as if this were a normal social call, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in my life. I stepped aside mechanically, watching her saunter into my home with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. She glanced around our living room, taking in the photos of Arnold and me throughout the years. Our wedding, our travels, our life together, with a look that was almost pitying. "He said his bags are packed and in the bedroom," she said, checking her designer watch. "He has a meeting in an hour, so I should hurry." Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the casual way she referenced his schedule. A schedule I knew intimately after 22 years. Maybe it was her assumption that I would simply hand over my husband's belongings without question. Or maybe it was the sudden, cold realization that Arnold had sent his pregnant mistress to our home deliberately, forcing a confrontation he was too cowardly to face himself. "Yes, they're ready," I heard myself say with surprising steadiness. "I'll get them for you." I walked to our bedroom, no, my bedroom now, where his meticulously packed suitcases sat by the door. He had always been organized, my Arnold, always planning ahead. He must have packed them this morning before leaving for work, knowing he wouldn't be coming back. I stared at the bags, 22 years of marriage reduced to 2 pieces of luggage, and that's when an idea flickered in my mind. A small, dangerous idea that spread like wildfire through my thoughts. I had 15 minutes at most before she would become suspicious. 15 minutes to decide how this story would end. I unzipped the first suitcase, revealing his carefully folded clothes, his favorite watches, his toiletries. The second contained documents, his backup laptop, and the leather portfolio I'd given him on our 20th anniversary. My hands trembled, but my mind was suddenly, startlingly clear. Arnold had always underestimated me. Had always seen me as the supportive, unquestioning wife who would stand by his side no matter what. Who better to know his secrets than the woman he thought would never use them? I reached for his portfolio, the one place I knew he kept everything that mattered. The combination was our anniversary date. At least he hadn't changed that yet. Inside were exactly what I expected. Documents, USB drives, and a small black notebook I had never seen him without. The evidence of the double life he'd been leading while building his business empire. "Is everything okay in there?" Melissa called from the living room. "Just making sure he hasn't forgotten anything important," I replied, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. I made my choices quickly, methodically. I wasn't acting out of blind rage. This was something colder, more calculated. I removed certain items, replaced them with others, and carefully re-zipped the bags exactly as they had been. When I wheeled the suitcases into the living room, Melissa was examining our wedding photo, her expression unreadable. "He was younger here," she commented, not looking up. "We both were," I replied. "That was 22 years ago." She finally met my eyes and I saw a flicker of something, uncertainty perhaps, or a moment of genuine empathy. "He said you two had grown apart, that your marriage had been over for years." Of course he did. The classic line of cheaters everywhere. "Did he?" I smiled thinly. Arnold has always been good at rewriting history to suit his needs. She bristled slightly at that, her hand instinctively moving to her belly in a protective gesture. "We're in love. He's starting a new life with me and our baby. He didn't want to hurt you, but he thought sending his pregnant girlfriend to collect his things would somehow be less hurtful?" I finished for her. How considerate of him. Her cheeks flushed. I offered to come. "He's been so stressed about everything." I handed her the handle of one suitcase. "Well, you can tell him not to stress anymore. He's free to start his new life." She seemed surprised by my composure, perhaps having expected tears or rage or begging. But 22 years with Arnold had taught me one valuable lesson. Never reveal your hand until you're ready to play it. As she awkwardly maneuvered the suitcases with her pregnant belly, I held the door open for her. "Melissa," I called as she headed toward her car, a luxury model that I suspected Arnold had purchased. "Just one question." She turned, her expression wary. "Did he tell you about his allergy to penicillin? Or that his blood type is AB negative? Things you might need to know for the baby." Confusion flickered across her face. No, but I'm sure he'll—" "And did he mention his first wife? The one before me?" Her expression told me everything I needed to know. There was no first wife. I had been his only wife. Until now, apparently. "He'll call you tonight to explain everything, I'm sure," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Have a nice life together." I closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing my legs to give way as I slid to the floor. The tears would come later, but in that moment, all I felt was a strange, powerful clarity. Arnold thought he knew me, thought he could discard me without consequences after 2 decades of marriage. He had no idea what was coming. That night, my phone rang 17 times before I finally answered. Arnold's voice was tight with panic. "What did you do?" he demanded without preamble. "Hello to you too, Arnold," I replied calmly. "How's your new life going?" "The documents, Hillary. What did you do with the documents?" I smiled into the darkness of my bedroom. "I think the question you should be asking is, what didn't I do?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "You had no right?" "No right?" I cut him off, my voice low and dangerous. "You send your pregnant mistress to our home to collect your things after 22 years of marriage, and you want to talk to me about rights? Hillary, listen to me." His voice took on that cajoling tone he used with difficult clients. "There are things you don't understand. Important papers that—" "Oh, I understand perfectly, Arnold. Better than you think. And it's too late now. My revenge is already done. And it's sweet and subtle. Not what you'd expect." "What does that mean?" The edge of panic in his voice was deeply satisfying. "What have you done?" "You'll find out soon enough," I replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a life to rebuild." I hung up before he could respond, turning off my phone and placing it on the nightstand. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for tonight, I had taken the first step toward something I hadn't felt in years: power. What Arnold didn't know was that I had discovered his secrets long before Melissa showed up at our door. And what he was about to learn was that the quiet, supportive wife he had so easily dismissed was far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The morning after Melissa collected Arnold's bags, I woke with a strange sense of calm. The bed felt larger without him, the house quieter, but not in an entirely unpleasant way. I'd silenced my phone after his panicked call, but as I turned it on, it immediately buzzed with notifications. 37 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 5 voicemails, all from Arnold. I ignored them all and made myself coffee. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about making it exactly the way Arnold liked it. This small act of defiance felt surprisingly liberating. As I sipped my coffee, I pulled out the items I'd removed from Arnold's bags the day before. His black notebook, a USB drive, and several documents that had been hidden in a false bottom of his portfolio. These weren't just any documents. They were the keys to understanding who my husband truly was. I had discovered Arnold's secret compartment 6 months ago while looking for our passports. At first, I'd respected his privacy, assuming they were just sensitive business materials. But something had nagged at me. After 22 years, shouldn't there be complete transparency between us? It had taken me weeks to work up the courage to examine the contents. What I found wasn't what I expected. Not evidence of an affair, though that came later, but something just as devastating. Proof that the man I'd built a life with wasn't who he claimed to be. The notebook contained detailed information about clients, but with strange notations I couldn't decipher. The USB drive held encrypted files, and the documents, those were what truly shook me. Birth certificates with different names. Arnold James Simon, my husband, appeared to have been born as Michael Thomas Harrison. "Who are you?" I whispered to the photograph of us on our kitchen wall. His smile, once so familiar, now seemed like a mask. I had been a librarian before retiring early at Arnold's insistence when his business took off. Research was my specialty, and I'd spent months quietly investigating, careful not to alert him. I discovered he'd created a completely new identity before we met. The question was why. My doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw a face I hadn't expected. Arnold's business partner, Alan. "Hillary," he said when I opened the door, his expression grave. "We need to talk." I let him in, noting how uncomfortable he looked in my home, despite having been here countless times for dinner parties and celebrations. "Arnold sent you," I stated, not bothering to phrase it as a question. Alan shifted awkwardly. "He's concerned about some missing documents. Says you might have taken them." "Concerned enough to send you, but not concerned enough to come himself?" I raised an eyebrow. How typical. "Hillary, please," Alan sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "This is serious. Those documents are crucial for the Henderson deal." The Henderson deal, a major contract Arnold had been pursuing for months. It would have been the crowning achievement of his career. "I don't know what you're talking about," I lied smoothly. When his girlfriend came to collect his things, I simply handed over what he had packed. Alan's expression changed subtly at the mention of Melissa. "Look, whatever is going on between you two personally, this is business. The company could suffer." "The company," I repeated, my voice hardening. "You mean the company I helped build? The one I entertained clients for, organized charity functions for, sacrificed my own career for? That company?" Alan had the decency to look ashamed. "I know you've contributed." "Contributed?" I cut him off with a bitter laugh. "I gave that company 22 years of my life, just like I gave them to Arnold. And now I'm supposed to care about its welfare? After what he's done?" A flash of confusion crossed Alan's face. "What Arnold's doing with Melissa is unfortunate, but it doesn't erase everything you've built together." Something in his tone made me pause. "You think I'm just upset about the affair, don't you?" Alan shifted uncomfortably. "Well, naturally." "Alan," I interrupted, studying him carefully. "How much do you really know about Arnold? About who he was before your partnership?" His hesitation told me everything. "We've been partners for 15 years, he said finally. "I know everything I need to know." "Do you?" I moved to my desk and retrieved a copy of one of the documents I'd found. Nothing too revealing, just enough to plant a seed. "Did you know his name wasn't always Arnold Simon?" Alan's face paled as he glanced at the paper. What is this?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out," I said quietly. "Who exactly is the man I married? The man you've been in business with for 15 years? Alan handed the paper back as if it burned him. "Hillary, whatever you think you've found, be careful. Some things are better left alone." His warning only strengthened my resolve. "Is that a threat, Alan?" "No," he shook his head. "It's advice from someone who considers you a friend. Just return whatever you took from his bags, for your own good." After Alan left, I sat for a long time staring at the documents spread before me. What had Arnold told him to make him so nervous? What was I dealing with exactly? My cell phone rang. Arnold again. This time I answered. "Where are the documents, Hillary?" His voice was controlled, but I could hear the underlying panic. "Hello to you too, Arnold. Or should I call you Michael?" There was a beat of silence. "You've been going through my things." "Technically, they were in our home. The home you abandoned yesterday by sending your pregnant girlfriend to collect your belongings." "Hillary, listen to me." His voice dropped lower, more urgent. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Those documents, are quite revealing, I finished for him. I particularly enjoyed learning that my husband of 22 years isn't who he claims to be. That was an interesting discovery after 2 decades of marriage. I can explain everything, he said quickly. Meet me somewhere. No, I cut him off. I'm done meeting you on your terms. If you want to explain, you can do it at my lawyer's office tomorrow at 2 p.m. Your lawyer? He sounded genuinely surprised. Hillary, this doesn't have to get messy. It got messy the moment you decided to start a new family while still married to me, I said calmly. But that's actually the least of your problems now, isn't it? His breathing quickened. What have you done? Nothing yet, I replied truthfully. But I've learned a lot in the past 6 months, Arnold. Things I'm sure you'd prefer stayed hidden. Things I put in places where they'll be found if anything happens to me. Are you threatening me? His voice rose in disbelief. I'm protecting myself, I corrected. Something I should have done years ago. After I hung up, I stared at the ceiling, my heart racing. I was playing a dangerous game with a man I no longer knew. But confronting Arnold had confirmed my suspicions. He was scared. And men like Arnold don't scare easily. That night, I was awakened by the sound of breaking glass. Someone was in my house. I slipped from bed, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the intruder could hear it. Grabbing the baseball bat I'd placed under the bed after Alan's visit, I moved silently toward the study where the noise had come from. Through the crack in the door, I saw a figure rifling through my desk drawers. Not Arnold. This man was taller, broader, a professional. My hand trembled as I dialed 911 on my cell phone, keeping my voice to a whisper as I gave them my address. The dispatcher assured me police were on their way, but I knew they might not arrive in time. The intruder turned suddenly toward the door, and I caught a glimpse of his face in the moonlight. Cold, expressionless, unknown. I pressed myself against the wall, bat clutched tightly in my hands. In that moment, I realized the stakes had just risen dramatically. This wasn't just about a cheating husband or a broken marriage anymore. Arnold hadn't just betrayed me with another woman. He'd brought something far more dangerous into my life. And as sirens wailed in the distance, I knew I had 2 choices: retreat into fear or fight back with everything I had. The intruder froze at the sound of approaching police, then moved quickly to the window. As he slipped out into the night, he took nothing with him, because he'd found nothing. The real documents were no longer in the house. I had already moved them to a safer location, anticipating that Arnold might try something like this. What I hadn't anticipated was how far he would go. As the red and blue lights flashed outside, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The man I had loved for 22 years was not just a liar and a cheater. He was dangerous, and I was now his greatest threat. The police took my statement about the break-in, but I could tell they weren't convinced it was anything more than a routine burglary attempt. Nothing had been taken after all. I didn't mention Arnold or my suspicions. Not yet. I needed more than suspicions. I needed proof. After they left, I couldn't sleep. The sun was just beginning to rise when I made a decision. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Caroline, it's Hillary. I need your help. Caroline had been my best friend in college, before Arnold gradually isolated me from my old friendships. She was now a private investigator, something I'd learned through occasional social media checks over the years. If anyone could help me unravel who Arnold really was, it would be her. We met at a cafe across town, where no one would recognize me. Caroline hadn't changed much in the 20 years since I'd seen her last. Still the same shrewd eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, just with streaks of silver in her dark hair. "You look good, Hillary," she said, studying me carefully. Considering everything, I gave her a tired smile. "I've had better weeks." "So, your husband's leading a double life," she stated bluntly after I'd explained the situation. Not exactly an uncommon story in my line of work. "It's more than just the affair," I said quietly, sliding copies of some of the documents across the table. "I think he changed his identity before I met him. I need to know who he really is, and why he's so desperate to get these back." Caroline examined the papers, her expression growing more serious with each one. "Where are the originals?" "Somewhere safe," I assured her. "After the break-in, I'm not taking any chances." She nodded approvingly. "Smart. And what exactly do you want to do with this information once you have it? It was a good question. One I'd been asking myself since discovering Arnold's deception. I want what's fair, I said finally. 22 years of my life went into building a life with this man. I deserve to know who he really is, and I deserve a fair settlement. And if what you discover is more serious than identity fraud, Caroline pressed, her voice low. These aren't the actions of a man who's just trying to hide a midlife crisis, Hillary. The break-in, the urgency. I've seen cases like this before. There could be serious criminal elements involved. A chill ran through me. Part of me had known this, but hearing it stated so plainly was jarring. Then I'll deal with that too, I said more firmly than I felt. Caroline studied me for a long moment. You've changed, she said finally. The Hillary I knew in college would have been in tears, trying to find a way to fix everything. 22 years with Arnold taught me a lot, I replied, including when something isn't worth fixing. She smiled grimly. Good. You're going to need that backbone. She gathered the documents and tucked them into her bag. I'll start digging. In the meantime, you need to act normal. Go about your routine. If he's watching you, and I'd bet good money he is, don't give him any reason to think you're plotting against him. I have a meeting with my lawyer today, I told her. Arnold's supposed to be there. Perfect, Caroline nodded. Set the divorce proceedings in motion. Make it seem like that's your only concern. And Hillary? Her expression softened slightly. Be careful. Don't trust anyone connected to Arnold. As I drove to my lawyer's office, Caroline's warning echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone connected to Arnold. But for 22 years, almost everyone in my life had been connected to him in some way. My social circle consisted primarily of his business associates and their wives. Even our family doctor had been a golf buddy of his. How thoroughly had I allowed myself to be absorbed into Arnold's world? My lawyer, Patricia Mendez, had been recommended by a women's support group I'd secretly joined online after discovering Arnold's deception. She specialized in complex divorce cases and had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. He probably won't show, Patricia warned me as we waited in her conference room. Men like your husband rarely face these situations directly if they can avoid them. She was right. At 2:15 p.m., Patricia's assistant entered with a message. Mr. Simon had sent his attorney in his place due to urgent business matters. Arnold's lawyer, Gregory Green, was precisely what I expected. Expensive suit, condescending smile, and an air of impatience, as if this whole situation was a minor inconvenience that could be resolved quickly with the right checkbook. Mrs. Simon, he began, not offering his hand. I understand this is an emotional time for you, but my client is prepared to be quite generous in the settlement terms. We can wrap this up quickly and painlessly if you're willing to be reasonable. Patricia's smile was shark-like. Mr. Green, my client has given 22 years to this marriage. She's entitled to far more than generosity. She's entitled to half of everything, including the business she helped build. Green's smile faltered slightly. The business is not on the table. Mr. Simon is prepared to offer the house, a generous monthly alimony, and a one-time settlement of, We're not here to negotiate today. Patricia cut him off smoothly. We're here to establish the framework for discovery. My client has reason to believe Mr. Simon has been concealing assets and possibly engaging in other deceptive practices that could materially affect the division of property. Green's expression hardened. Are you accusing my client of financial impropriety? I'm stating that my client has evidence of concerning behavior that warrants a full investigation before any settlement discussions can begin. Patricia replied calmly, including, but not limited to, possible identity fraud. The slight widening of Green's eyes told me Patricia's arrow had hit its mark. He knew something. These are serious allegations, he said stiffly. If you're planning to pursue this line of inquiry, my client will have no choice but to respond in kind. Is that a threat, Mr. Green? Patricia asked pleasantly. A statement of fact, he replied, gathering his papers. I suggest you discuss with your client whether a lengthy, expensive, and potentially damaging legal battle is really in her best interest. Mr. Simon's offer is generous now. It may not remain so if this becomes contentious. After he left, Patricia turned to me. He's rattled. That's good. What did you mean by respond in kind? I asked, suddenly uneasy. Patricia's expression was grim. It means they'll dig into your life looking for anything they can use against you. Past indiscretions, financial mistakes, mental health issues, anything to diminish your credibility or claim to the marital assets. I laughed humorlessly. They won't find much. Arnold controlled everything. Our finances, our social life, even my daily schedule. I was the perfect corporate wife. No one's perfect, Hillary, Patricia warned. And divorce litigation has a way of making even innocent actions look suspicious. Are you sure you want to go down this road? A quick settlement would be easier. I thought of the break-in, of the documents hidden in Arnold's portfolio, of the life I'd given to a man who'd been lying to me from the beginning. I'm sure, I said firmly. Arnold doesn't get to walk away with everything after what he's done. That evening, I received a text from Caroline. Found something. Can't talk on phone. Meet tomorrow, same place, 10 a.m. The cryptic message left me both anxious and hopeful. Was I finally going to learn the truth about the man I'd married? My phone rang just after midnight. Arnold's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It's midnight, Arnold. Call off your investigator, he said without preamble, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. My blood ran cold. How did he know about Caroline? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence, Hillary, he hissed. I know you met with Caroline Douglas today. I know you gave her documents from my portfolio. Call her off, or I can't be responsible for the consequences. Fear and fury battled within me. Are you threatening me, Arnold? Like you threatened me by sending someone to break into my house last night? There was a pause. What are you talking about? I didn't send anyone to the house. He sounded genuinely confused, which only confused me more. If Arnold hadn't sent the intruder, then who had? Hillary, listen to me. His voice lowered urgently. You've stumbled into something you don't understand. For your own safety, stop digging. Return the documents, call off Douglas, and take the settlement offer, please. Why should I believe anything you say? I asked bitterly. You've been lying to me for 22 years. Not about everything, he replied softly. Not about us. I did love you, Hillary. Part of me still does. That's why I'm warning you now. You're in danger. We both are. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat in the darkness, my mind racing. Was it possible Arnold hadn't sent the intruder? And if not him, then who? What exactly had I uncovered? Sleep eluded me that night as I considered the possibility that there was a third player in this game. Someone neither Arnold nor I had anticipated. Someone who might be more dangerous than either of us realized. Tomorrow's meeting with Caroline couldn't come soon enough. As dawn broke, I made a decision. Whatever the truth was, I would face it head on. No more being the passive, supportive wife. No more letting others dictate my fate. If danger was coming, I would be ready. I arrived at the cafe 30 minutes early, my nerves on edge after Arnold's midnight call. I chose a table with a clear view of both the entrance and the back exit, something Caroline had taught me during our brief meeting yesterday. Old habits from her law enforcement days, she'd explained. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour, just a barista arranging pastries and an elderly couple sharing the newspaper. I ordered a coffee I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. At precisely 10 a.m., Caroline walked in, looking different than she had the day before. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back severely. She wore glasses I hadn't seen yesterday, and her casual clothes had been replaced by a crisp business suit. She scanned the cafe with practiced efficiency before joining me. Don't react to anything I'm about to tell you, she said quietly, placing a manila folder on the table between us. Just listen. We're being watched. My heart stuttered, but I kept my expression neutral, taking a sip of lukewarm coffee. Not here in the cafe, she clarified, seeing my eyes dart around. But your house is definitely under surveillance. Your phones are probably tapped too, and Arnold knows you hired me, which means someone very professional is tracking your movements. Arnold called me last night, I admitted softly. He warned me to stop investigating, said I was in danger. He denied sending someone to break into the house. Caroline's expression remained impassive. but I saw concern flicker in her eyes. He might be telling the truth about that. Look at these. She opened the folder, which contained several photographs. They appeared to be surveillance photos of Arnold entering and exiting various buildings, talking to people I didn't recognize. In one, he was arguing with a tall man in an expensive suit outside what looked like a hotel. That's Alan Johnson, I said, recognizing Arnold's business partner. And the hotel is the Grayson, Caroline added. Very exclusive, very discreet. Often used for high-level business meetings that need to stay off the record. I studied the other photos. Who are these other people? This is where it gets interesting. Caroline tapped one photograph showing Arnold with a severe-looking older man. This is Viktor Kozlov, Russian businessman with alleged ties to organized crime. Nothing proven, of course, but he's on several watch lists. My mouth went dry. What would Arnold be doing with someone like that? That's what I wanted to know, Caroline said. So I dug deeper into Arnold's original identity. Michael Harrison. Turns out Michael Harrison supposedly died in a boating accident 25 years ago, except the body was never recovered. He faked his death? I whispered, stunned despite suspecting that Arnold was hiding something major. Caroline nodded grimly. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Michael Harrison was under investigation by the FBI at the time of his death, suspected of money laundering for the Russian mob. The cafe suddenly seemed too warm, too small. That's impossible. Arnold built his business from nothing. I was there. Was he already wealthy when you met him? Caroline asked. I thought back to our early days. He had startup capital for his business. He said it was from an inheritance and savings from his previous job in finance. Convenient story, Caroline remarked. And one that's hard to verify, especially if you're besotted with a charismatic new boyfriend. The bitter truth of her words stung. I had been completely in love with Arnold when we met, so much so that I never questioned his background too deeply. When he suggested I quit my job at the library to support his growing business, I'd agreed readily. When he gradually separated me from my friends, including Caroline, I'd accepted it as the natural evolution of a relationship. If Arnold, or Michael, was involved with the Russian mob, why resurface? I asked. Why take the risk of being discovered? That's the million-dollar question, Caroline said. My guess? He thought he was safe. New identity, new life, respectable business. But something changed. Maybe his old associates found him. Maybe they needed his services again. The Henderson deal, I said suddenly, remembering Alan's urgency about the missing documents. Arnold's been obsessed with it for months, said it would be the crowning achievement of his career. Caroline's eyes narrowed. Tell me about this deal. It's a major contract with Henderson Global. They're expanding into Eastern European markets, and Arnold's company would handle all their logistics and supply chain management. It would be worth millions. Eastern Europe? Caroline mused. Including Russia? The implication hit me like a physical blow. You think the Henderson deal is a front for something illegal? Money laundering? It would make sense, she nodded. A legitimate business contract providing cover for illicit financial activities. The perfect setup. I thought of the encrypted files on the USB drive I'd taken from Arnold's portfolio. I have something that might confirm this. Files from a USB drive I took from his things. They're encrypted, but don't tell me anything more. Caroline cut me off, her voice suddenly sharp. Not here, not now. She slid a small device across the table, a burner phone. Use this to contact me from now on. And Hillary, be very careful with those files. If they contain what we think they might, they're explosive. What should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the scope of what we were uncovering. For now, proceed with the divorce as planned. Act as if that's your only concern. I'm going to reach out to some old contacts, see if there's any active investigation into Henderson Global or Kozlov's activities in the U.S. And Arnold? What about his call last night? Was he actually warning me because he cares, or manipulating me? Caroline's expression softened slightly. In my experience, it can be both. He might genuinely want to protect you, while also protecting himself. Men like Arnold or Michael compartmentalize. The loving husband and the criminal can exist in the same person. As we parted ways, Caroline gripped my arm. One more thing. That woman, Melissa, the pregnant girlfriend, have you looked into her background? I shook my head, embarrassed to admit I'd been so focused on Arnold that I hadn't thought to investigate the other woman. You might want to, Caroline suggested. In these situations, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Back in my car, I sat for a long moment, trying to process everything I'd learned. Arnold, a criminal with mob ties. Our entire marriage potentially built on lies. The possibility that I was now caught in the crosshairs of dangerous people. But strangely, amid the fear and shock, I felt something else. A growing resolve. For 22 years, I'd lived in Arnold's shadow, accepting his version of reality. Now, I was uncovering the truth, piece by piece. And with that knowledge came power. I started the car and drove not home, but to a small technology shop Caroline had recommended, one that specialized in data recovery and encryption. The young man behind the counter looked barely out of his teens, with multiple piercings and bright blue hair. My colleague said you might be able to help me with an encrypted drive, I said cautiously. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Caroline sent you? Back room. In a cluttered office filled with computer equipment, he examined the USB drive I'd taken from Arnold's portfolio. Military-grade encryption, he murmured after several minutes of typing. Not something an ordinary businessman would use. Can you break it? I asked. He gave me a look that suggested I'd questioned his abilities. It'll take time, and it won't be cheap. How long? And how much? 3 days minimum, $5,000. It was a steep price, but I nodded immediately. Do it! As I drove home, the burner phone Caroline had given me buzzed with a text. Look into Melissa Stone, former employee at Henderson Global. Convenient coincidence? My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Melissa had worked for the very company Arnold was so eager to do business with? That couldn't be random chance. What if the pregnant girlfriend wasn't just a midlife crisis, but something more calculated? What if Melissa was as much a part of whatever scheme Arnold was involved in as he was? I pulled into my driveway, noticing a car I didn't recognize parked across the street, watching my house, just as Caroline had warned. I forced myself to act normally, collecting my mail as if I hadn't noticed anything unusual. Inside, I locked the doors and drew the curtains. Then I opened my laptop and began searching for information on Melissa Stone and Henderson Global. If she was more than just the other woman, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. And if Arnold and Melissa thought they had successfully manipulated me, the naive, trusting wife, they were about to discover just how wrong they were. The package I had prepared for Arnold was still waiting to be revealed. The items I had carefully planted in his suitcases that night would soon detonate in his new life, and neither he nor Melissa would see it coming. My phone, my regular phone, rang. Melissa's number flashed on the screen. I answered with a calm I didn't feel. Hello, Melissa. We need to talk, she said, her voice tight with an emotion I couldn't identify. It's about Arnold, and it's urgent. I agreed to meet Melissa at a public park, neutral ground where we could talk without being overheard, yet safe due to the afternoon crowd of mothers with children and elderly folks feeding pigeons. I arrived early, choosing a bench with clear sight lines in all directions, another habit I'd picked up from Caroline. Melissa appeared right on time, her pregnant belly even more pronounced than when she'd come to collect Arnold's bags. She moved with the awkward gait of someone in their third trimester, one hand supporting her lower back. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for her, pregnant and caught in whatever web Arnold had spun. Thank you for meeting me, she said, lowering herself onto the bench beside me. Up close, I could see the strain in her face, dark circles under her eyes, tension around her mouth. Not the look of a woman triumphantly starting a new life with her lover. You said it was urgent, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Something about Arnold. Melissa glanced around nervously before speaking. I think I've made a terrible mistake, she said finally. With Arnold. With everything. That makes two of us, I said dryly. A flash of genuine pain crossed her face. I deserve that. But Hillary, I need you to know. Things aren't what they seem. Which part? I asked. The part where you're carrying my husband's child? Or the part where you worked for Henderson Global before conveniently becoming involved with the man negotiating a major deal with them? Her eyes widened in surprise. You know about Henderson? I know enough, I said, watching her carefully. What I don't know is your role in all this. Are you Arnold's lover, his co-conspirator, or just another pawn? Melissa's hand protectively covered her belly. It started as a job. Victor Kozlov approached me at Henderson, said they needed someone to get close to Arnold, learn his vulnerabilities, what motivated him. They wanted to make sure he would be amenable to certain arrangements in the Henderson deal. Arrangements that weren't exactly legal, I supplied. She nodded miserably. At first, it was just supposed to be flirtation, information gathering. But then, she trailed off, looking away. You actually fell for him? I finished, surprised by the lack of jealousy I felt. After what I'd learned about Arnold, jealousy seemed beside the point. He can be very charming, Melissa said quietly. You know that better than anyone. And he seemed lonely, unhappy. So unhappy in his 22-year marriage that he got you pregnant, I said sharply. Her face flushed. The pregnancy wasn't planned. It complicated everything. Kozlov was furious, said I'd gotten too personally involved. Arnold was panicked at first, but then he said it was perfect, that we could use the pregnancy to expedite things. Expedite what exactly? His exit strategy, Melissa said, meeting my eyes directly. Arnold has been looking for a way out of his arrangement with Kozlov for years. He thought the Henderson deal would be his chance. One last big score, enough money to disappear again. Start over somewhere new. With you and the baby, I added. She looked down at her hands. That was the plan. Until 3 days ago. That's when I found out. Found out what? I pressed. That I'm not the only pregnant girlfriend, she said bitterly. There's another woman in Chicago, an executive at Henderson's American headquarters. She's 5 months along. Arnold's been promising her the same things he promised me. Despite everything, I felt a fresh wave of shock. Even knowing what I now knew about Arnold, his capacity for deception still managed to surprise me. And that's not all, Melissa continued. The documents you took from his portfolio? Kozlov is desperate to get them back. They contain evidence of the money laundering operation. Names, dates, account numbers. If they fell into the hands of the authorities, Arnold would be ruined, I finished. And so would Kozlov. Melissa nodded. Arnold's convinced you switched the real documents with fakes when I picked up his bags. He's been frantic trying to figure out what you did with them. A cold smile spread across my face. So that's what this is about. You're here to convince me to return the documents. No, Melissa said emphatically. I'm here to warn you. Kozlov is not a patient man. The break-in at your house? That was just the beginning. If you have those documents, you need to go to the authorities now, before... She stopped abruptly, her gaze fixed on something over my shoulder. I turned to see a black sedan pulling up to the curb about 50 yards away. They followed me, Melissa whispered, her face draining of color. We need to leave, now. My heart pounding, I rose from the bench. My car's on the other side of the park. We'll never make it, Melissa said, struggling to her feet. Hillary! The voice that called my name wasn't a stranger's, but Caroline's. She was striding purposefully toward us from the opposite direction of the sedan, and she wasn't alone. 2 men in suits flanked her, their postures screaming, "Law enforcement." FBI, Caroline said once she reached us, flashing a badge I didn't know she had. Hillary, Ms. Stone, you need to come with us. Now. The men from the sedan had exited their vehicle and were moving in our direction. One placed his hand inside his jacket, a gesture that needed no interpretation. Those men work for Kozlov, Melissa said urgently. We know, Caroline replied grimly. We've been tracking them. And you. She guided us quickly toward a waiting SUV with tinted windows. As we pulled away, I saw the men from the sedan return to their vehicle, but they didn't follow. The presence of federal agents had clearly deterred them, for now. You're FBI? I asked Caroline once we were safely en route. She nodded. Retired officially, but I still consult. When you came to me with your concerns about Arnold, some things sounded familiar. I reached out to former colleagues who've been investigating Viktor Kozlov for years. And the documents? I asked. The ones from Arnold's portfolio? Potentially key evidence, Caroline confirmed. If you still have them. I do, I said. Not on me, but somewhere safe. And the USB drive? She pressed. Being decrypted as we speak, I told her. Caroline exchanged a look with one of the agents. Good. If it contains what we think it does, it could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. Melissa looked confused. You planned all this? From the moment Hillary contacted you? Not exactly, Caroline admitted. But I recognized an opportunity when I saw one. Hillary's discovery gave us a way into an investigation that's been stalled for years, and your decision to come forward today filled in the missing pieces. What happens now? I asked. Now we complete the operation, Caroline said simply. Your husband, or whatever his real name is, has a meeting with Kozlov tonight to discuss the Henderson deal. With what we now know and the evidence you've provided, we can finally move on both of them. And what about us? Melissa asked, her hand once again protectively covering her belly. Witness protection, if necessary, Caroline replied. Depends on how valuable your testimony proves to be. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt an odd sense of clarity. What about the things I planted in Arnold's bags? My sweet revenge? Caroline raised an eyebrow. What exactly did you do, Hillary? I smiled thinly. I replaced his important documents with elaborate fakes. Subtle changes to key details. Names, dates, account numbers. Enough to cause chaos if he tried to use them. And I included a USB drive of my own, filled with corrupted files that would destroy any system trying to read them. You did what? Melissa gasped. I figured if he was so desperate to get those documents back, they must be important, I explained. I didn't know exactly why, but I knew they were his weakness. So I exploited it. Caroline actually laughed. Remind me never to cross you, Hillary. But that's not all, I continued. I also included copies of all his text messages with Melissa that I'd found while searching his phone months ago, and screenshots of his online searches about prenuptial agreements and divorce laws, plus a letter from me explaining exactly how I'd discovered his deception and how I planned to make him pay for it. Psychological warfare, Caroline nodded approvingly. When he called me in a panic that night, it wasn't just about the missing documents, I said. It was about realizing that the quiet, compliant wife he thought he knew was gone. That I wasn't going to just fade away quietly while he started his new life. As we pulled into a secure government facility, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The truth about Arnold was far worse than I'd imagined. But knowledge, even painful knowledge, was power. For 22 years, I'd lived in the dark. Now, finally, I was stepping into the light. Inside, as FBI agents debriefed Melissa in another room, Caroline sat with me in a small conference area. You know the case against Arnold will be stronger with your testimony, she said gently. I nodded. I'll tell them everything I know. It won't be easy, she warned. Your entire marriage will be scrutinized. Every financial transaction, every trip, every decision. People will question whether you could have truly been ignorant of his activities all these years. Let them question, I said firmly. I know the truth. And the truth is that I trusted the man I loved. That was my only crime. Caroline squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I think your revenge was inspired. Even without the FBI involvement, you would have destroyed him. I smiled sadly. The funny thing is, once I discovered who he really was, revenge became less important. I just wanted my life back. My real life. Not the illusion he created for me. And now? Caroline asked. Now I get to find out who Hillary Simon really is, without Arnold's influence, I said. Turns out she's stronger than either of us knew. As night fell, FBI agents prepared to move in on Arnold and Kozlov. I watched from a distance as they loaded into vehicles, strapped on bulletproof vests, checked their weapons. The life I had known was ending tonight. But unlike Arnold, who had lived in fear of his past catching up with him, I was facing my future with clear eyes and an open heart. My revenge hadn't been about hurting Arnold. It had been about reclaiming myself. And in that, I had already succeeded.